Kunja Bihari. Madhava Kunja Bihari. Kunja Bihari. Jai Kunja Bihari. Jai Kunja Bihari. Nityam Bhagavatam Sevaya. Bhagavati Uttama Sloke. Bhaktir Bhagavati Naistaki. Before reciting the Shima Bhagavatam, which is our very means of conquest, we first offer respectful obeisances unto the personality of Godhead, Lord Narayan, unto Narayana Rishi, the supermost human being, Mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning, and Srila Vyasadeva, the author, by regular attendance in classes on the Bhagavatam, and by rendering service to the pure devotee, all that is troublesome within the heart becomes destroyed to practically nil, and thus loving service unto the glorious Lord, who is praised with transcendental hymns, becomes established as an irrevocable fact. Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, Chapter 2, Remembrance of Lord Krishna, text number 24. Before we get started, I've been having this here for 2 weeks and I keep forgetting about it. Anybody who needs this, they can take this information. It's about internet safety, information for parents and guardians only of Hancock County youth. Just so happens we're in Hancock County. It's a free webinar, which probably has already passed. Yeah, it's been going since the summertime. But anyway, there must be some information on here how one can gain parental controls on cell phones to monitor activity concerning online substance procurement, sexting, which is, talking about sex on text, cyberbullying, popular apps, and the latest laws of cybercrime. And there was some investigator from the Cybercrime Division of the Attorney General's Office. So anyway, you can contact the Hancock County Sheriff's Office or the Waveland Police Department, Bay St. Louis Police Department, Diamond Head Police Department. Or you can hype Hancock Youth for Positive Effects. So.
That's only the youth?
Well, they're concerned about that because there's a lot more restrictions on the internet concerning youth than adults. But there's some very strict rules concerning any person looking at pornography of children, child porn. That's a major crime, and anyone can go to prison for that. So, but the concern here was, kids, having free access to cell phones and computers and entering into the, they call it the dark web. On the web, on broadband, pornography actually has the major share of all of it. More so than athletic things and educational things and religious things. So it's a constant battle. It can happen to anyone. A person very easily become persuaded, influenced, fall into that maya just by it coming across. Sometimes even an innocent person, you're simply looking at something and the most rudest commercial will pop up, So, it's a major thing in all schools and youth groups as well as adult groups, just as we're concerned about intoxication, drug use, meat eating, gambling. So we're also concerned not only about people being involved in prostitution or illicit sex, but the majority of that happens just on the internet. People don't really buy so much hard books anymore, magazines, they just use the internet. Okay, so text number 24, please repeat. Manye, Suran, Bhagavatam, Tradishe, Manye, Suran, Bhagavatam, Tradise, Saramba, Moga, Binisvita, Chitan, Samramba, Moga, Binivishta, Chitan, Ye, Samyuge, Chaksata, Taksha, Putram, Ye Samyuge, Chaksata, Taksha, Putram, Amse, Sunaba, Yudam, Apatantam, Amse Sunaba Yudam Apatantam, Manye Suran Bhagavatam Tradishe, Samramba Maga Binivishta Chitan, Ye Samyuge Chaksita Taksha Putram, Amse sunaba yudam apatantam.
Amse sunavayudam apatantam.
Manye suran bhagavatam tradise.
Manye suran bhagavatam tradise.
Samramba morga binivishta chittam.
Samramba morga binivishta chittam.
Samyuge chatsita takshaputram.
Samyuge chatsita takshaputram.
Amse sunaba yudamapatantam.
Amse sunavayudam
Manye suran bhagavatam trayadishe.
Manye suran bhagavatam trayadishe.
Samramba morga binivishta chittam.
Samramba morga binivishta chittam.
Samyuge chatsita takshaputram.
Samyuge chatsita takshaputram.
Amse sunaba yudamapatantam.
Amse sunavayudam apatantam.
Manye suran bhagavatam strayadeshe.
Manye suran bhagavatam trayadishe.
Samramba marga binivishta chittam.
Samramba marga binivishta chittam.
Ye samyuge chakshata takshaputram.
Ye samyuge chatsita takshaputram.
Amse sunaba yudamapatantam.
Amse sunavayudam apatantam.
Manye suran bhagavatam trayadishe.
Manye suran bhagavatam trayadishe.
Samramba marga binivishta chittam.
Samramba marga binivishta chittam.
Samyuge chatsata takshaputram.
Ye samyuge chatsita takshaputram.
Amse sunavayudam apatantam.
Amse sunavayudam apatantam.
Manye suran bhagavatam strayadeshe.
Manye suran bhagavatam trayadishe.
Samramba marga binivishta chittam.
Samramba marga binivishta chittam.
Ye samyuge chakshata takshaputram.
Ye samyuge chatsita takshaputram.
Amse sunavayudam apatantam.
Amse sunavayudam apatantam.
Manye suran bhagavatam tradise.
Manye
suran bhagavatam trayadishe.
Samramba marga binivishta chittam.
Samramba marga binivishta chittam.
Ye samyuge chatsita takshaputram.
Ye samyuge chatsita takshaputram.
Amse sunavayudam apatantam.
Amse
sunavayudam apatantam.
Manye suran bhagavatam trayadishe.
Manye suran bhagavatam tradishe.
Samramba marga binivishta chittam.
Samramba marga binivishta chittam.
Ye samyuge chatsita takshaputram.
Ye samyuge chatsita takshaputram.
Amse sunavayudam apatantam.
Amse sunavayudam apatantam. Okay, word for word, please. Manye.
Manye.
I think.
I think.
Asuran.
Asuran.
The demon.
The demons.
Bhagavatam. Great devotees.
Great devotees.
Triadi say. Unto the Lord of the three. Triadi say.
Triyadise.
Samramba. Enmity.
Enmity.
Marga.
Marga.
By the way of.
By the way of.
Abhinivishta,
Abhinivishta,
Chitan,
Chitan,
absorbed in thought.
absorbed in thought.
Yea,
Yea,
those.
those.
Samyuge,
Samyuge,
in the fight.
in the fight,
Achaksita,
Chakshana,
could see.
could see.
Takshaputram.
Takshaputram,
Y'all know who that is, huh? Garuda,
Garuda,
the carrier of the Lord.
the carrier of the Lord.
Yeah, because Putram means son, and Taksha, Taksha is his mama, and his dad is Kashyapa. So next word, say,
Say,
on the shoulder,
on the shoulder.
Sunaba,
Sunaba,
the wheel,
the wheel.
Ayudam,
Ayudam,
one who carries the weapon,
one who carries the weapon.
Apatantam,
Apatantam,
coming forward.
coming forward.
Okay, translation, please repeat. I consider the demons
I consider the demons
who are inimical toward the Lord
who are inimical to the Lord
to be more than the devotees.
to be more than the devotees.
Because
Because
while fighting with the Lord,
while fighting with the Lord,
absorbed in thoughts of enmity,
absorbed in thoughts of enmity,
they are able to see the Lord.
they are able to see the Lord.
Carried on the shoulder of Garuda,
Carried on the shoulder of Garuda,
the son of Taksha,
the son of Taksha,
they put in parentheses Kashyapa, and carrying the wheel weapon in his hand.
carried the wheel weapon in his hand.
Srila Prabhupada's divine purport. The Asuras who fought against the Lord face to face got salvation due to their being killed by the Lord. The salvation of the demons is not due to their being devotees of the Lord. It is because of the Lord's causeless mercy. Anyone who is slightly in touch with the Lord, somehow or other, is greatly benefited, even to the point of salvation, due to the excellence of the Lord. He is so kind that he awards salvation even to his enemies, because they come into contact with him and are indirectly absorbed in him by their inimical thoughts. Actually, the demons can never be equal to the pure devotees. But Uddhava was thinking in that way because of his feelings of separation. He was thinking that at the last stage of his life, he might not be able to see the Lord face to face as did the demons. The fact, the fact is that the devotees who are always engaged in the devotional service of the Lord in transcendental love are rewarded many hundreds and thousands of times more than the demons by being elevated to the spiritual planets where they remain with the Lord in eternal, blissful existence. The demons and impersonalists are awarded the facility of merging into the Brahma Jyoti effulgence of the Lord, whereas the devotees are admitted into the spiritual planets. For comparison, one can just imagine the difference between floating in space and residing in one of the planets in the sky. The pleasure of the living entities on the planets is greater than those who have no body and who merge with the molecules of the sun's rays. The impersonalists, therefore, are no more favored than the enemies of the Lord. Rather, they are both on the same level of spiritual salvation. Thus ends the Bhaktivedanta Purport to the 24th verse, 2nd chapter, 3rd canto, Srimad Bhagavatam, remembrance of Lord Krishna. Anye suran bhagavatam trayadishe samramba morga binivishta chittan yesam yuge chaksita torchaputram amse sunabayudam apatantam. I consider the demons who are inimical toward the Lord to be more than the devotees, because while fighting with the Lord, absorbed in thoughts of enmity, they are able to see the Lord carried on the shoulder of Garuda, the son of Taksha and Kashyapa, and carrying the wheel weapon in his hand. It reminds me of that beautiful picture and story where Krishna has just defeated all the Devas who were rounded up, called into action by their celestial leader, Indra, because Krishna dared to take the most beautiful Parijata tree from the celestial world. You can't just take another person's property. I mean, even here on earth, that's against the law. So Krishna is not a resident of Indraloka in the celestial world. I mean, he lives, we know, in Goloka Vrindavan, but he had appeared on the earth. So Satyabhama had become envious, transcendentally, of Rukmini, because Krishna had given her Parijata flower. And sometimes people are like that, even in the spiritual world. They want something that one of Krishna's devotees got. And so she pestered Krishna enough about it that he actually took it to the celestial realm and took a whole tree for her. But, this is against the law. You can't even go down to Mr. Lee's property. Just go down there and see. Go down to Mr. Lee's property. That's that lady right past Shastra's house on the right. That's Mrs. Lee. Her husband died 20 years ago. And, he was a reverend in this local area. And she lives there alone. Sometimes her daughter comes from Florida. And her daughter practices yoga. She's come over here and taken prasadam. But her brother lives right across the street. And her brother does not like the devotees. But he keeps himself kind of locked up. He's one of those survivalists. Really keeps like a big fence in front of his yard. Doesn't want anybody looking in or anything. But his mama lives across the street. So just go over there and try to go in their yard and pick a flower and see what will happen. They'll be calling the police in no time. So similarly, Krishna went there with Satyabhama. This is in Indra's kingdom. You can't just go to somebody else's house. It's Indra's kingdom. Krishna didn't have permission. He just went there and took the flower tree, the whole tree. Not just the flower. He didn't pick just the flower. He took the whole tree. So Indra retaliated. What was he to do? This was his wife's favorite tree. So Indra called into action the celestial forces, and they all attacked Krishna. After all, amongst Kshatriyas and people with this type of nobility, they don't test one another just by questioning them about the truth. They might do that, but that's usually up to statesmen and attorneys or brahmanas. Warriors test one another by, their might. You know, all right, so you took this, do you have the might to keep that? You know, this wasn't yours and you took it, it's mine, and I'm going to take it back. It seems like simple logic, and it is, but, you know, you're dealing with persons who are much more powerful than earthlings or human beings who, you know, can, you know, the police and military can mass very powerful weapons, and they can put into action very trained forces who know how to utilize all these weapons in very strategical ways that can easily defeat the enemy. So, you know, they came into action and attacked Krishna. And Krishna defeated all of them for his wife Satyabhama. And as they rode back into the middle planetary system, to the planet Earth, Krishna was attacked by one demon, whose name I can't remember right now. Maybe it was Dantravakra. Huh? Was it Narakasura? But that's when Narakasura, maybe it was then, but Narakasura was his son. From
Vamasura was Krishna's son.
Baumasura. Okay,
Yeah, Baumasura.
Narakasura must have been someone else. I thought maybe they were the same. They're same person. Same person, just different names. One name means one thing. But anyway, he was the son of Krishna from Varaha. When Varaha lifted the earth bore Narakasura or Baumasura. And by bad association, keep that in mind, by bad association, he was a good kid. But by bad association, he developed the qualities of the Asuras. And he started to become a very possessive guy, to the extent that he had kidnapped like 16,000 princesses and was keeping them in his, what do they call that when somebody's put under house arrest? Keeping them under house arrest. So anyway, if it was him who attacked Krishna or Dantravakra, maybe it wasn't Dantravakra is a different one. There was 3 demons at that time who attacked Krishna. But probably it was Narakasura. But the picture is, and it's described very nicely in the words of the Bhagavatam, and the artists have drawn a beautiful picture of it, that Krishna looked like lightning, surrounded by dark clouds, standing on the back of Garuda, holding his Sudarshan chakra, while Satyabhama sat on the back. I mean, she's a Kshatriya princess, so, you know, they're not frightened to do these types of things, you know, they're not too shy about it, especially Satyabhama, who, you know, whose nature is very fiery, whereas, you know, Rukmini's nature is very gentle. So, of course, Krishna cut off his head, and that was the end of Narakasura. But as we learn here, you know, Narakasura didn't attain something inauspicious, but, you know, he attained Brahmananda, the pleasure of Brahman realization. You know, he didn't get any ill karma for all those past misdeeds. He was actually freed from it just by coming into sight of him being so lucky, just by coming into sight of his father, you know, Bhagavan, Sri Krishna. He attained the Brahman effulgence. You know, his soul left the body. The body's just temporary. It's just a machine that we're all driving around in, including the celestial beings. You know, in the celestial worlds, many times the demons are slain and they're brought back to life. You know, through mantra and perhaps some ever potency that their guru possesses. So the body is not the self. The self, the Atma, is the person who is giving the body consciousness. Without a superior Atma in the body cannot walk, the body cannot talk, the body will just decompose. The body is formed because of the Atma. On earth, the Atma enters through the semen of the father, and the soul enters the semen of the father through the grains he eats. So the Atma enters, and when the father impregnates the mother, the egg and the sperm come together, and the body begins to be created. The soul is there, but then he starts to become covered by a body. In that state, on earth at least, he's generally unconscious. In the celestial worlds, this all happens very quickly. There's no real pain or ignorance involved. The soul can all happen in one day. The conception and the appearance and even the growing up. It may take longer depending on the pastimes that the Lord may want to perform, or the pastime of that particular devotee. But in other cases, for example, in the case of Hidimba and Bhima, Gatikash, he appeared and grew up and was ready to serve his parents. So he was a powerful combination of the son of the wind god in the human world, and a Rakshasi, powerful Rakshasi. So he grew up very quickly. So the celestials don't go through the same pains that us mortals, we're considered mortals. Our world is considered the world of death. The world of work, where people have to slave or work very hard to make a living. Even the rich, they always have to protect things, and they're always being bribed to do things, or they're bribing somebody else to do things, and there's always somebody who will violently take what they possess. So everyone is forced to work very hard on these earthly planets. And for what? Ultimately, for death. And then we're not awarded according to our accomplishments here, at least not according to the amount of money we accumulate or the amount of positions that we hold, but we are rewarded according to our piety. So whenever we bribe someone, that may not be the most pious thing to do. Maybe we bribe somebody, for a very pious result, such as maybe helping a crippled person that wasn't being helped for whatever reason. And so you bribe someone to help them. You give some money to somebody to help that person because nobody's helping them. But just to bribe somebody to lie to get your child a better position, like last summer when that movie actress was caught robbing the university officials to give her daughter a big position, an appointment in the university. She didn't have the qualifications to get into such and such school, but her mama gave a few $100,000 to some administrators to get her in. And it all became exposed. So she suffered some instant karma. So, the karma we cannot escape. It's controlled, just like once you're caught in the judicial system, even on earth, you can't very easily escape. You may try to sneak off, but then it only gets worse. So even on earth, you can't escape when you're caught in the judicial system. In one sense, we're all caught in it, but as long as we obey, then there's no problem. But as soon as you disobey, you may get away, but then all of a sudden you're caught. And you can no longer get away. And then you're held accountable for it all. So, much more strictly is the universal law. And, nobody gets away. Everybody is apprehended and made to pay the price according to their deeds. So we are not rewarded according to how much money I accumulate in property, how great my children have become, or how great I have become in the eyes of people, in the eyes of the newspapers, in the eyes of my fans or political base or whatever it may be, my clients, my customers. No, we're rewarded according to our piety. And, we had to suffer for our impious deeds, all those impious deeds we did. Like maybe we caused some problem to a bunch of ants. We poisoned them. Everybody does that every day in the South. And with to speak of the roaches that, we spray. I mean, these things are impious in the laws of universal law because those are living creatures. And they always live amongst humans. So, we all had to pay the price. So therefore, Vishnu gives us the system of sacrifice in this world, whereby all those ill reactions can be burned up. Even in the Gita, Krishna says, by acquiring transcendental knowledge of the self, all the karma becomes burned up. The transcendental knowledge is such a pure thing that it burns up all sorts of ill karma just by the result of coming in contact with transcendental knowledge, with the speak of assimilating it and putting it into practice, learning it and living it. Then all of our ill karma becomes burned up. Krishna gives this system of transcendental knowledge of sacrifice. He's not found anywhere. There's one verse in the Gita. Where is he found? He's found in acts of sacrifice. Even Krishna says, don't ever give up acts of sacrifice and penance. Even the great souls are always engaged in acts of sacrifice and penance. And he further says that the demons, though, they flee here and there, just hearing the sound of my name. But the devotees, they're always chanting the name. And of sacrifices, Krishna says, I am the chanting of the holy name. And Lord Chaitanya, of course, brings it to the earth today as our form of sacrifice. The Brahmins would wake up early and light the sacrificial fire and perform an Agnihotra. Agnihotra, it takes, 2 hours, 3 hours, 4 hours, depending on how long their rituals are, how many hymns they're vibrating, All these things, take time and expertise, just like it takes time for a surgery. Some surgeries may be in an hour, other surgeries may go on all day long, and there can't be any, mishaps, or the patient is harmed. So everything has to be very meticulous and expertly done. There can't be any inattention. So, the Brahmins, when they do these yagas, there's a Brahmin there just to make sure something's not mispronounced, so he can correct it. There has to be somebody there because, any little mistake can be made. So there's 2 or 3 just checking on things, making sure it's done exactly right. So in this day and age, very difficult to do all this stuff. I mean, even in our ISKCON, when we do it, 24 hours a day in Mayapur, there's a sacrificial fire kept going, and maybe doing it in Vrindavan. But in Mayapur, it used to be done. But it's can't compare to previous ages where that was actually the system based on the longevity of life and health that the people possessed, that the devotees possessed. That was the system of bhakti to please Guru and Krishna. But in this day and age, not possible to do it exactly. We're not just to imitate it. There may be people that, grow up like that. It comes down in a dynasty of Brahmins. Just like there's a dynasty of warriors, they may not be able to wield the same weapons, but they undergo the same type of training to learn how not to be afraid to fight and to die any given day for what is right. So that spirit comes down. So they have this spirit, this Brahminical activity that comes down through the family heritage, and people even to this day do it. But it's not practical. means of sacrifice. Most people nowadays, they can't wake up and do this and maintain a family. Maybe they're a very popular and famous person, and so, people, actually give them a lot of dakshin, or charity. And so they can survive easily and help other people survive. But there may be the one like Sudama Brahmana, who never really gets his means, even though he's a very pukka person. Even Lord Chaitanya's father, Jagannath Mishra, told his wife one day, look, I am a pukka Brahmana. Krishna will send things, but if he doesn't, what can I do? I mean, there are thousands of Bhattaracharyas here in Navadvip who can't even pronounce the alphabet correctly. And look how much money they have by the will of Providence. And here I am, I can pronounce all the alphabet properly, and I'm an educated scholar. But if Krishna hasn't sent anything, what can I do? So it's not just by our material labor or qualification, it's by the will of God, by our destiny. Things will come. So, the pious and impious deeds. So this Tantrabhakra, he was freed from all that just by the sight of Krishna. That's how auspicious Krishna is. What to speak of as chanting his name. That's how auspicious it is. How is the world changing? Do we ever think about that? I mean, why isn't it still like it was in 1950? I mean, you know how it was in 1950? I mean, there was so much religious and racial intolerance all over the world. People had just fought a huge war based on, bigotry, practically speaking, and being angry about, what the court had decided, the fine that they had to pay for the previous war. They just went to war again, to cut the throat of the people that had prosecuted them. While enslaving thousands and thousands of people, just because of their ethnic background. It was a terrible place. People had went and fought for the same countries to help liberate other countries. They would come home, and just because of the color of their skin, they would be persecuted. Just as other people had fought in the previous war, just because, on the side of, against the enemy, and then they were persecuted in the same country just because of their religion. I mean, that's the type of mentality that existed. How can you change that mentality when people think they own it all when it belongs to them? It belongs to the white race because, we are superior. I mean, even to this day in India, they don't trust white people, many people. That's how racist it can be because they feel that they have been exploited previously. So why are they going to trust the same people? In their eyes, they'll think like that. So the world in 1950, how can you change such a world? Why is it changing? Do we really think it's because of the way we're educating people? I mean, certainly to some degree, but why would they even allow it? Maybe it is the chanting of the holy names that's changing things. Maybe it is that purification that's coming from Krishna's name being chanted. Maybe because Bhaktivedanta Swami brought the chanting of the holy names into the Western world, that things are changing. I mean, it wasn't changing in 1965. There was all sorts of stuff going on. People were being labeled communists. They were sending troops over there to fight with them. The communists were ready to fight back. There was always threat of nuclear war going on. I mean, all these things were happening. All of a sudden, Bhaktivedanta comes and he starts chanting the holy names. Now, why is it that just 50 years later, people are holding accountable, the actions of what people did during those times, and it's considered that it wasn't right? You know, and if you try to do it today, then people all point a finger at you. I mean, look, the President of the United States constantly was being accused of racism because of the way he talked. Whereas that was, acceptable just a generation or two ago. So maybe it is Krishna's holy names that are changing some things. Maybe it is something divine that's changing the mentality of people. So that's the power of Krishna. To the extent that Narakasura, who had become a bad guy, became freed from it all. Just because he saw Krishna and was killed by Krishna. The soul can't be killed, but all those misdeeds were killed. That body was slain because that body was a sura and was causing harm. He had just kidnapped 16,000 princesses who wanted to be released. Against their will. But don't some people think that they can do that? They can do whatever they want, to another person. Some people think like that. I have the power to do it. I can just manipulate and trick. I have the money to do that. I can, so many ways I can do so many things, and I can get what I want out of another person. People, it's sinful. But Krishna can purify all that. Just like he did to this Narakasura. So this is what Uddhava, Krishna has left. He can no longer see Krishna face to face. So he's thinking, here I am. My life will come to an end. Will I be able to see Krishna? The demons are, more fortunate than me because they can see Krishna at the end of life. Whereas I'm doubting. Krishna has left. Maybe I won't see him. But Prabhupada assures us in his purport that the devotees will always be, Prabhupada says, hundreds and thousands of times more fortunate than the demons. This Brahmananda, Prabhupada, he equates to how the impersonalists who actually do austerities and yoga to attain it. That's how much they want that pleasure. The same thing that the demon killed by Krishna automatically gets, they work hard to get that. But Prabhupada compares it to practically nothing. In other places he compares it to just the water you see in the calf's hoof print after a rain. The calf makes a little imprint in the earth and it fills up with a little water. It's compared to that. Whereas the ocean of bhakti is the bliss that the devotees get. And Prabhupada says, you can imagine how much nicer it is to live on a planet. Like, isn't it nice to live on this planet? What if we were just some molecule in the atmosphere? I mean, how nice is that? You can't really do anything. And who says that the desire goes away to do something, to enjoy something, to have some fun, to have some relationship with others? Who says that all goes away? We may, negate it all. But then what do we do? How long can you sit in the sunlight? So, the people, the inhabitants, who control when they can sit in the sunlight and when they can sit in the shade and, and when they can have a beautiful night with stars and moon and have all sorts of activities. They're the ones who are enjoying. But the impersonalists, not knowing about spiritual enjoyment, they just see the fault in material enjoyment. You do that, you become attached, and then it's all ripped away. Your wife's got cancer, you got a traffic ticket, you lost your job, the kids want more than you can give. They can't go to the same schools as the rich kids can go to. I mean, so many faults. So they see that, though. They see that fault. They see that misery. And so they transcend it. But they transcend it by negating everything. And what do they get? They get, either nothing or something impersonal. Because they were so unfortunate they could never take shelter of the Lord's lotus feet. They ignored the Lord and his devotees, for coming coming under the influence of, so-called spiritual masters. Who knows some Shastra and knows some Sanskrit and can perform some austerities and who live a very pious life, but have, misled their disciples to something that's inferior. So we have to stop now because of the time. And so I won't take any questions because of things are just going longer. And the breakfast is waiting, and if we don't make it over there, Bhishma may eat it all. So don't tell him that, he'll be insulted, Srila Prabhupada ki jai.